It's going to be a challenge for me. I'll do my best. Kurt brought his wife. That's cool. So we're going to talk about like the best subject ever. Ask any kid if you're unclear on this, and that's dinosaurs. So we're going to talk about that today. I don't know, is this a friendly church, or do they like to maintain a certain kind of distance? Yeah, come on up. Wait a minute. Okay, here, look. You can come up. All right, here we go. Did you know the Bible talks about dragons? You probably knew that. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He does what? Deceives. He's a deceiver. And incidentally, Revelation 12 is just in front of Revelation 13, which is in front of Revelation 14, which is last days. Right? So the devil is interested in deceiving the world as we're getting into the last days especially. And what would he especially like to deceive the world into thinking? Maybe that they were not created by a loving creator. So anyway, keep that in mind. That's a dragon's idea. But what does the word dragon mean? Does it mean this? Something pointy and red and fire-breathing and all that kind of stuff? Actually, no. The Greek word is drakon, and it simply means big reptile. Now, when you remember that, you're bringing to the word itself an image from medieval times, this fire-breathing kind of thing. But back when John wrote this in Revelation, 2,000 years ago almost, to him, dragon was simply a great reptile. Keep that in mind because that's going to really impact our talk. So I'm going to give you a modern history of dinosaurs. And I just like that subtitle so well. I gave myself a little smiley face for that. That's pretty good. Modern history of dinosaurs. That's pretty cool. Okay, here we go. And when I'm talking to kids, I say, don't you want to be a scientist? That guy's a dude. Look at his hair. It's 1676 in Oxford. This is the head of the chemistry department. And he wrote the first scientific paper on a dinosaur bone. Very similar in size and shape to this bone right here. This is the end of a leg bone of a dinosaur, probably a hadrosaur. So anyway, he's writing a paper about this. He didn't know about dinosaurs yet in 1676. So what do you suppose he thought it was from? In England. Not a dragon. An elephant. Good guess. A Roman-era elephant. He thought it was from the days of the Romans. Let's go to America. This is a pastor. 1836, Edward Hitchcock wrote about some footprints that were in the ground right next to the road that goes into town where he was pastoring in Connecticut. And those footprints looked like bird footprints, and he imagined them to be, at some point in history, giant birds lived in our area, like maybe ostriches or something. And this is what the footprint looked like. So, to this day, that is a giant, deposit, shall we say, of footprints in Connecticut. It's huge. It's under a big dome the size of this church. They're bigger. Anyway, but thinks they're giant birds. But no, they're dinosaurs. Let's go to England again. England is, there was a Dr. Mantell, and he and his wife found some bones and this tooth. He showed the tooth to some friends that might know more about it, and what do you suppose this tooth is from, he would ask. And he said, finally, one of them said, well, I'll tell you what it looks like, but it can't be that. Well, what does it look like? It looks like an iguana's tooth, but it's 20 times too big. Okay, from that and a few more bones, they eventually discovered what would be called an iguanodon, an iguana tooth dinosaur. And the first pictures look kind of like that, kind of funny looking, huh? That was the first pictures of ancient beasts living. Well, actually now we think it's probably a little more like that, but that's okay. So, and as I like to point out to secular groups, a Christian scientist was Richard Owen, and Richard Owen was the one who came up with the term Dinosaurus, which means awesome lizard. Awesome. Actually, you've heard it said terrible lizard, but terrible was awesome back when they wrote that word back in the day. Awesome lizard. So they're beginning to figure it out. They're finding a couple of bones here and there, but here's the biggest single event as far as I'm concerned that put dinosaurs on the map. Dr. Joseph Leidy was a Philadelphia-based scientist. He had a museum, like a science institute downtown Philadelphia. He found out that there was a woman across the border in New Jersey that had a backyard full of big bones. So he asked her, can I come dig them up and put them in my museum? Yes, you can. He did that. He assembled them. Did not have a skull. So he made one out of paper mache. Put it on top to give it a little bit of a, look. And so this is what he came up with. He called it a hadrosaur in 1858. Folks, that is the world's first display of a dinosaur skeleton. First one in the world. And obviously today, just about every museum has got some of these. But back then, sensational. Blew people away. What kind of animal was this? Now, this being America, Dr. Leidy found out he could sell tickets. And so he did sell tickets. And the line went down the street and around the corner. This being America, other museums noticed that. And suddenly, they wanted to get some of these big bones themselves. So they hired these dinosaur hunters, these bone hunters, to go out and dig up bones in Colorado, in Montana, in Alberta, Canada, in Utah, Arizona, Wyoming. These are the places, South Dakota. And they were finding bones. Meanwhile, in Europe, they were finding more iguanodons, and so they found some in Belgium. Also, American dinosaurs were starting to tour Europe in their museums, and the Louvre got a very nice brachiosaurus from America to show about the turn of the century, and the Louvre in Paris. So, for 50 years of finding dinosaur bones, the biggest thing that they could imagine was don't get stepped on, because all the teeth showed to be vegetarian teeth. So the scariest thing was don't get stepped on. It was like big giant elephants, bigger than elephants, but just, watch out where they step. And that was the thing. So they're big and otherwise harmless. Okay. In the Smithsonian, of course, being the National Museum, has got to have a nice dinosaur, so they were able to acquire this and put it on display in 1905, and they called it a Brontosaurus. Anybody know what Brontosaurus means? Saurus is always lizard. Brontosaurus is thunder lizard. So they could imagine when it was walking down the hallway, boom, boom. So that was the idea. Well, a beautiful specimen. They had people come from all around the world looking at it and say, wow, that is a fabulous, are you sure about the head? Turned out they had the wrong head on the dinosaur. It was a head from another dinosaur. So that was a little embarrassing for the National Museum. But anyway, they had a head of a Camarasaurus on the body of a Patasaurus and called it a Brontosaurus. So if you want to get into an animated discussion today with a dinosaur nerd, and trust me, they are out there, ask them, do you think there is such a thing as a Brontosaurus? He will have an opinion, or she will have an opinion. Okay, moving on. So this is the first painting they had on the wall in the Smithsonian of that Brontosaurus, and take a look at that, and it was giving people the idea of what kind of world was there back then, I mean, you look at this, and you to imagine being there is something. Now, meanwhile, evolutionists are saying to Christians, okay, you guys, where are these in the Bible? Come up with an explanation for dinosaurs. And our answers varied anywhere from, to, I think the devil made those bones and put them in the ground, just to confuse us about, origins and stuff. Not real good answers, but those that we didn't know. We have better answers now. So, and incidentally, there are the two heads. The head on the top is the Apatosaurus head. That's the one that should have been on the body. Instead, they had the Camarasaurus, the shorter head there, like that. For years, the best bone I had in my own collection was a lower leg bone, fibula, of a Camarasaurus. Gives you an idea. There it is right there. And a man by the name of Kenley Sorensen made me a very nice mount for it. And so I do have it on display. Where is he? Pointing over there? That guy over there. Stand up, Kenley. That guy right there. He knows how to do things with wood. He's made me a couple. Yeah. If you ever get a dinosaur bone and you want to mount it nicely, you're retired. We'll have to induce you some way. But now my best bone is actually not mine personally. It's the North Pacific Union Conference of Seventh-day Adventists are the owners in our museum there. And this big one there is the original of this one. This is a cast. This weighs 19 pounds. That one with the mount is 850. I can't carry it in my Civic very well. So anyway, we got a cast made. But take a look at that guy. It took 5 of us to wrestle it into position there. And there's some value to it, but we just don't think it's going to go anywhere. Yeah. So take a look at that. That is, going back to the Camarasaurus picture before, that is the thigh bone. So you just bump up to the next leg up there, and it's the thigh bone of Camarasaurus. And that is a full-grown one. That's a wow bone, folks. They don't often get this big. In fact, this is about as big as bones get. I think I've seen a couple that are this big, but that's about it. And that's pretty impressive. Like I said, you didn't want to get stepped on. That was the idea. That was the imagination of people about dinosaurs when they were first found. And for those first 50 years, don't get stepped on. And then they found something. Then they found something that had teeth, serious teeth. And this is Osborne's discovery in 1905 in northeastern Wyoming. And I've been down the road. It's a dirt road, and the guy that knew the area was driving, and he said, "Sam, you see that hill up ahead there? Yeah, that's where Osborne found it. The first Tyrannosaurus rex. T-Rex, or king tyrant lizard." Now, folks, this changed the image of dinosaurs. Suddenly, you not only don't want to get stepped on, you don't want to get eaten. Or at least that's the image that was presented. And that changed people's whole ideas of dinosaurs. That's the first one on display, 1905. And incidentally, the vast majority of those bones are made up casts. We'll talk about that in just a second. What did T-Rex eat? Here's T-Rex right here. I like this one because he's smiling. What did T-Rex eat? Triceratops. How would we know that? How would we know that T-Rex ate Triceratops? Triceratops, it looks like this. 3-horned Triceratops. Ate these. How would they know that? They found a skeleton with stomach contents still, and they found bits and pieces of Triceratops in it. Now, that doesn't settle the big question of, was this a predator or a scavenger? Right? Now, why would you even wonder about this being a predator? Maybe it's not a predator. Those front arms look pretty small to catch something, and it also, frankly, doesn't look very streamlined, like it could run very fast. It looks like it's got a lot of weight. I often tell people that we know hadrosaurs lived near T-Rex. Hadrosaurs, giraffe-sized dinosaurs. We know that these could run 25 miles an hour. Oh, how do we know that? Because T-Rex could run 24 miles an hour. Okay, that wasn't hard science right there. What's kind of interesting is this fossil that they found not terribly long ago. That is a T-Rex and a Triceratops basically in the same place. The Triceratops had teeth marks on it. The T-Rex had broken ribs. So it looks like they were in combat with each other just as they were getting covered up with mud and covered and preserved as fossils. Now, what does that make you think of? Just as the flood was catching them. Okay, interesting. There's a footprint of a T-Rex. T-Rex footprints. There's maybe another one now. I think there's another one somewhere else, but discovered in 1983 in a site well guarded. And it is 33 inches long, 28 inches wide, and get this, 9 inches deep. So a pretty heavy animal. Made in the mud, and the mud became rock. Now this T-Rex is on display in Hill City, South Dakota, and its name is Stan. Thank you very much, yes. Stan, now it was named after the discoverer. I forget his full name, but it was named Stan. For years, Stan was considered the best T-Rex ever found because 40% of Stan was found. That was the most ever found. Now you go, wait a minute, that's a skeleton, 40% of it? Actually, technically in science, if you have 10% of an animal, that's a skeleton. Now, why is that interesting or important? Think about this. Whenever you get a news flash, new dinosaur skeleton discovered somewhere, and the experts are saying, oh, this just fills in all kinds of gaps in our theories, and oh, this is so helpful, and what a wonderful discovery. It can often be just a few bones with a whole lot of imagination. But anyway, 10% qualifies as a skeleton. Stan was the best ever until they found a dinosaur named Sue. Sue was found in 1990 in South Dakota and found on Indian land, which, as it turns out, means there was a fight over who owned the bones, and Indians will always win that. So they won the rights to the bones, and it was sold to the Field Museum in Chicago. Sue was 90% complete. And there she is on display in Chicago. And guess what? The Field Museum, being in America, sells tickets. And Sue's worth it, though. I'm sure she's paid for her $8 million tab by now. She's incredible. A big, beautiful thing. Incidentally, almost all of those bones are casts. I hate to burst your bubble, but whenever you go to a museum and you see a dinosaur skeleton, I would say 9 out of 10 times you're looking at a replica, and even if they own the real ones are probably in their lab and they're studying them or something. And they're too valuable usually to put too far out, and if they fall, they're heavy, they'll break, they'll hurt somebody for a lot of reasons. Anyway, although now you'll find some museums who make it very clear this is the real skeleton because they know they're getting bad publicity on some of this. Now, T-Rexes are very important for the following question: how old is the Earth? Because T-Rexes are basically considered to be at the top of the Cretaceous. That means they're among the last dinosaurs to live. That puts them at right around, the newest bone could be 65 million years old. 65. But in the year 2005, they took a bone and put it in a laboratory, and they wanted to get to the inside of it, so they started to dissolve the outside of it in a liquid. They ended up getting too far, and actually to the very middle of the bone, and you could almost hear somebody shouting across America, "We have soft tissue here." What? We have soft tissue here. We've got a flexible vessel or two. We have red blood cell stains on there. All these things should not be here if it is 65 million years old. Now, the scientist that was in charge of this group, a woman named Mary Schweitzer, published her findings and caught all kinds of stuff, fill in the blank, from fellow scientists saying this is terrible work. You obviously don't know what you're doing. There cannot possibly be soft material inside of a bone. Please recheck your work. You're an embarrassment to us. I mean, really strong language. And so one or two of their suggestions actually did resonate with her that she needed to do. And so she went back and did all her work again, came back with the same conclusion. And now science is actually admitting that she's got something here. Now, she said this, and this is a good science statement. She said, either things are preserved in ways we had no clue of before, or these bones are not as old as we thought. And that is actually good. Last night, you saw some of the things that I mentioned that had been found. Now we're looking for protein in bones. We're looking at fossils in a totally different way. We're starting to look for remnants of things from the days they were alive that should not be there if you're an evolutionist. And they're finding proteins, they're finding chitin, they're finding, in one or two somewhat controversial cases, they're actually finding DNA strands. All of these things based on their own studies, evolutionist studies, that we just gleaned from previous work. All these things break down in thousands of years, not millions of years. Nothing is around after 1 million years of all the above. And that they've long concluded that. So now we're using their own information to show then that these bones can't be as old. They're thousands, not millions. Is that cool? That's kind of interesting. Footprints. Let's talk about footprints. Footprints are fossil evidence. The word fossil means something dug up. I'll leave that. That's a real softball. We could go with that one, couldn't we? Things that are dug up. Footprints are fossil evidence. And there is a place in Texas called the Paluxy River State Park. And you got to go. Don't go in August or September. But go some other time. And you will find a creek bed there where kids come splashing in the water, having a great time, and there are dinosaur footprints all around them in the rocks. Real dinosaur footprints from real dinosaurs. Not Disney made or anything like that. They're a real thing. I don't know of any other place like it. There it is, right? Now, let's see if I got the picture here. Yes, I do. Okay, this is the place where some people have imagined or even presented the arguments for that human footprints are there together with dinosaur footprints. Have you ever heard of this argument or this idea? One person here has? Okay, raise your hand if you've heard of that. Okay, thank you. Just want to see. It would be the smallest group I've ever seen, if that's the case. No, this is, and one of the earliest proponents of human footprints with dinosaur footprints was an Adventist, and got the kind of going out there in the creation newspaper stuff. So here is a line of footprints to the left. A man is walking out there to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. They're fairly narrow footprints, but frankly, as you study them more carefully, they do not look like human footprints to me. And to most creation scientists that have looked at it very carefully, that are not biased in thinking it couldn't possibly be, most of these have been discredited. I could leave it at that. I could go into some detail, but I'm personally in this cynic area of believing human footprints have been found. Incidentally, for instance, if these were human footprints, these would be humans of our size today. And many of us feel that people were larger, perhaps before the flood. So that would discredit those as being possible. Anyway, so just think about it. You can see water does things to footprints. They can make them different shapes. That's a set of dinosaur footprints not terribly long ago found in Utah. But you can see water can change the shape of them quite a bit. All right, so anyway, let's keep going. Why do we think that dinosaurs were lizards, besides structural reasons? Well, we've actually found skin impressions of dinosaurs. And what a skin impression is basically when the animal died, mud covered it up. Mud would, of course, harden into rock, but the body would deteriorate and go away, but it would leave that cast. Used to be we're just ripping through all that to get the bones out. Now they're a little more careful. And they pop this open, and they can see the cast of the skin. I've got one of those up here, and if you want to come and take a look, you can see clearly scales in the skin, like any other reptile. So we're rather sure that dinosaurs were big lizards. All right, now when we talk about eggs, when I was a kid and I thought about dinosaurs, I imagined that their eggs would have been the size of a Volkswagen Beetle or something. I mean, that was my image of a dinosaur egg, but in fact, the largest dinosaur eggs that we find are basically this size. And this is a dinosaur egg. They get just a little bigger, but think of an ostrich egg is about it. So this is from China. It's full, it's solid, it's got rock and sand in it. Does not probably have bones in it. If it did, it'd be 1 in 10,000. But most do not have bones. But anyway, that is a dinosaur egg from China, where most of them come from, frankly. Argentina, France, Montana, China. So, and here's a picture of one that actually did have some bones in it. Almost certainly was from a hadrosaur. Raptor eggs are longer or narrower, but they're still Not huge, which is interesting because that makes even the biggest dinosaurs, like this guy, eventually, even the biggest ones started off pretty small, probably about that size as a baby. So, kind of interesting. Might impact a question that's going to come up. So, right now, I want you to take out pen and paper and write down some facts because now you're going to know what you're going to be doing this June. I'll wait while you get ready to write it. Don't you want to go do a dinosaur dig? I mean, who doesn't want to do that? It's open to volunteers. A real dinosaur dig. This is run by Southwestern Adventist University out of Keene, Texas. And this family owns a ranch out here in blank, forsaken, desolate, far from any human beings, northeastern Wyoming. Quite literally, the least inhabited county of the least inhabited of the 48 states. But there are 1 billion bunny rabbits out there, I'll tell you that anyway. Anyway, this place happens to be a world-class dinosaur deposit. World-class. The people that own this property have owned this ranch and their family for 100 years. They're Christians. They don't want the bones to be studied by evolutionists. Good for them. So God in his providence actually connected Southwestern with them, and for every year, for several years now, they go in June for 1 month. They open it up for volunteers to come, and you will spend anywhere from 1 day to 30 days, up to you, pay a camp fee for food, and you will go and dig dinosaurs at an 18-inch layer of mudstone that you can't hardly put your shovel in the ground and hit something. You will hit some bones. So, this is Dr. Art Chadwick, head of the science department. Either he or one of his associates will lead out in a worship after breakfast and then tell us where we're going to go and what we're going to do. And off we go. And there I am digging up a hadrosaur rib bone. A rib bone is probably about this long and of a giraffe size. Yes? Oh, wouldn't that be sweet? Do you get to keep what you found? No. In fact, the university only has them on loan from the owners of the property. So, yeah. Now, I know the people a little bit, and they know I give lectures with kids and everything. They gave me a box of broken pieces of bones to hand out to the kids, which are all gone now. But anyway, yeah. But no, I mean, I would love to have kept that rib bone. I'd probably about $1,000. I think I know the retail market. That'd be about $1,000 bone. But anyway, take a look at right by the brush. Behind my brush there, you see a little squeegee bottle. You squeeze that liquid on the bone, and it kind of goes right into the bone and makes the bone hard, very hard and easier to transport. So before we remove it from the ground and wrap it up like this and put it in foil and take it away, it's going to have somebody like Dr. Chadwick come over with a GPS locator and actually put it on the corner of the bone to locate its position within a fraction of an inch. Eventually, that bone will they'll snap a picture of that bone and drop it in a software program like this. And it has the effect of putting the bones right where they were found and removing the dirt and the rock. Is that not amazing? This is cutting-edge stuff that these guys are doing. In fact, that program allows you to turn it 3D, and you can look at it this way as well. It's very interesting. Now, take a look at this bone field. Huh? I'm taking a group of teachers out this summer. Okay, so take a look. What do you not see in that bone field? Skulls. Don't see any skulls, because skulls break the quickest. The skulls are the most difficult to preserve. Thinnest bones, round, breaks. What else do you not see? Do you see the leg bone connected to the hip bone or anything like that? Is anything connected? No order. There's no order. These are all disarticulated bones. There's nothing connected anywhere, which gives you a clue as to what happened here. Now, also, the edge of the bones have a little bit of wear on them. That also gives you a clue. I asked Dr. Chadwick, have you guys surveyed, because this is the Badlands from South Dakota, just edging over into Wyoming, low canyons. You can see the same 18-inch layer over there. I asked Dr. Chadwick, have you surveyed over there yet? Yes, we have. How about over here? We did the whole area. What's the bone density like there? He says it's consistent wherever we survey. I said, my goodness. And he says these are almost all hadrosaur bones, big dinosaurs. Have you done any number crunching? Yeah. We're looking at about 10,000 hadrosaurs. 10,000 giraffe-sized dinosaurs. You can see why this is a world-class area. Okay, I'm going to tell you the only possible scenario for what happened to these guys. And I can't think of anything remotely going to do this. First of all, wherever these dinosaurs died, they were not exposed to the air for very long, because you can see that when you look at bones and study bones. If they've been in the air for very long, you can see what that does to them. These weren't that way. Instead, what apparently happened was these were rolled and rolled possibly for miles. Rolled and rolled in water. Rolled. Finally, the bodies came apart. The skulls broke. And eventually that just mishmash of broken bodies ended up here and got covered up in mudstone and preserved. Now you tell me what that sounds like. It sounds like a whole lot of water. And that took these guys out. That's the only explanation for this as far as I've heard or can imagine. Very interesting. So if you want to do this, swau.edu/dinodig. And check on it. And they're taking registration right now for this year. Okay, so anyway, let's keep going. SWAU, that's Southwestern Adventist University.edu/dinodig, D-I-N-O-dig. Yes?
Why so many of one species in one place?
Well, they're all herding together wherever they were, yeah. And wherever they were probably gathering as a last resort against the rising water. So they got caught in some somewhat restricted area. Okay. Yeah?
The 10,000 were found in what area? What size area?
You know what? I can only, probably a square mile or so, something like that. I'm just guessing from looking across it. Yeah, something like that. Okay, does the Bible tell us anything about dinosaurs? Remember, the word dinosaur is a fairly new word. Okay, so God created great sea creatures on day 5. And creatures there is the word tananim. Tananim in Hebrew for the rest of the Old Testament usually means reptiles. Did he create sea reptiles? I don't know. Anyway, possibly. But look at this. Now, I already told one gentleman today, if you'd like to know what you could read on a Sabbath afternoon that's creation-oriented, check out Job 38-42, where God is speaking to Job. It is the longest section in the Bible where God is speaking nonstop. That right there should get your attention. But he's basically bragging to Job about the cool things he's made in the universe and in the animal world and so forth. And incidentally, remember, he starts off with, who darkens counsel without knowledge? You guys are talking about stuff you don't have a clue about. And he kind of starts off with that. I'm curious to know why he mentions ostrich to them. Because of all the animals, he gets around to ostrich and he says, check out the ostrich. You know what? I didn't give him a lot of brains. It's a pretty stupid bird. And I think, why do you even bring up a dumb animal? You know? And the more I think about it, the more what the emphasis might have been is I could have made him smarter. I could have made you smarter too. I don't know. I just think there might be something to that. Okay, so along the way he talks about two amazing animals. Leviathan. Have you heard of Leviathan? Leviathan, there's a whole chapter on. Leviathan is basically an animal that's got very tough skin, can't be penetrated by normal spears and arrows and all that kind of stuff. Very tough. The body is talked about like armor, plating practically next to each other. Then also it makes the water boil. Now, scholars, if you have the kind of Bible that has a little tiny print at the bottom of the page, scholars think that a Leviathan it's a Nile crocodile. Nile crocodile, I actually think works pretty good there, because if you know about a crocodile, when it has prey in its mouth, it will spin with it. And as it's spinning in the water, it kind of looks like it's making the water boil. So, I don't know, that might work. But behemoth? Let's take a look at behemoth, and I'll tell you what the same scholars say about behemoth. The word behemoth means beast, so no help there as to what it is. Look now at the behemoth, God says to Job, which I made along with you. He eats grass like an ox. Whew, vegetarian. See now, his strength is in his hips, his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. His bones are like beams of bronze. His ribs like bars of iron. Okay, very strong strong animal. He is the first of the ways of God. Now that phrase caught me, and I wanted to understand what that means, first of the ways of God. Does that mean chronologically first? I don't think so. I think instead this is talking about place in the animal kingdom. It's kind of like the winner of the Amazing Animal Contest, first place. This is the animal that stands out among all the animals. Okay, so now I'm getting ready for something. This is going to be good. Tiny print. Scholars think this was a hippopotamus. I don't know, it just doesn't generate the same sort of sense of awe when I see a hippopotamus. Because the tail, right? I hear you talking already. The tail. In Hebrew, it says he sways his tail like a cedar. I don't know if you've ever seen the tail of a hippopotamus. It doesn't evoke images of a mighty cedar tree. And neither does second place, which is elephant. Same thing. So, okay, sways his tail like a cedar. Most amazing animal would stand out, maybe the alpha of all animals. Might it be something like, here is the south end of a hippopotamus. There is Job standing next to it for scale. Might it be something more like this? And I just want you to think about that and consider it. Because would this be an animal, and this would be legendary to Job, but would this animal be a tail like a cedar tree or something that would be amazing? I kind of like it better than hippopotamus. Now, I don't know if this is a hill we're dying on, but hippopotamus doesn't do it for me. So I'll let you think about that for a little bit. And we got some Adventist quotes coming up here in a minute, so don't worry. Now, what does the word evolution mean? One word definition. Don't give me the verb form. Evolve. What does it mean? Change. It means change. So that's what it means. Evolution means change. Now, do we creationists believe any animals have changed? What about this guy? Was he like that when Eve saw him in the tree? We're told that it was a flying animal, and I actually kind of think that would have been true. Incidentally, I have no problems with the idea of birds and reptiles sharing some common physical structure. That common physical structure made evolutionists think one evolved into the other. But I just think there's some relationship, because we're looking at this tree, there's something in the branches that could fly, and eventually it becomes this. Now, for a moment, I'd like you to do me a favor. I want you to unscrew your heads for just a minute. Unscrew your Greek heads, because you're Greeks. You're all Westerners. You only think like Westerners. I know you. Take your Greek heads off and put Hebrew heads on and think like a Hebrew for just a minute. I'll wait while you do that. Think about it, because here's the subject: blessings and cursings. Blessings and cursings. If I am a Greek and I curse you, I've just sworn at you or something. That's all I've done. If I bless you, I basically are saying, have a nice day. If I'm a Hebrew and the blessing comes from God, the blessing enhances whatever it is and makes it better and more of what it was before. If you curse something, it is now less, and has evolved, shall we say, or become weaker or something. It is worse than what it was before. Jesus understood this, remember? He said, when you go to a town and you're doing evangelism, when you go to a town and you stay at a house, let your peace rest on that house. But if that's not a worthy house, that's not going to work out, you take it back. Now, it's as though it enhanced that house, that blessing. That's Hebrew thinking. Now, this animal gets cursed, and I want you to remember, cursing means it's now less than what it was. In fact, God says to the serpent, "You are cursed more than all cattle. On your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust." So here's actually the physical description now of what the curse is going to look like. You are now less of an animal. You're not as beautiful as you used to be. You're not as attractive to Eve or anyone else as you used to be. In fact, now you're going to be on the ground and you're going to eat dust. You're going to be the opposite, in a lot of ways. You are cursed. Oh, but not you only. All cattle. Everybody's going to feel the effect of sin in the animal kingdom, and they're all going to be less than what they were. Are you with me? Do this. Okay, so remember that as we talk about dinosaurs. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth also was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, indeed it was corrupt. All flesh had corrupted their way on the earth, and God said to Noah, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them." Notice the biggest difference in the animal kingdom is it is now a violent kingdom. And this is why God targets the animals as well as people with the flood. So they are corrupt. They have gone from what they were intended to be to now something much less. Okay, take a look at this guy. Whoops, not him. Animals look like food. Take a look at this critter. This is an ankylosaur. Here's a version of an ankylosaur right here. This little guy, this guy looks like he's a tank on 4 legs. Look at his back. He's got spikes at his back. He's got an armored head. He's got a tail that's a club, could clearly be used as a weapon. I just don't picture this thing traipsing around the Garden of Eden, at least like that. Are you with me on this? Looks like some of these animals came from a world that was combat-oriented. Take a look at this Stegosaurus. Stegosaurus has bony plates on his back. It's got spikes in his tail. It could whip around as a weapon. Okay, take a look at Pachycephalosaurus, which basically means bonehead. Take a look at, he runs with a very thick skull into things as obviously some kind of a weapon. Now, the question I have for you is, does this look like the way the animals must have come from the Garden of Eden creation, or is there something going on with them since? And of course, these are the ones we have in the flood. Take a look at this nodosaur. This was just recently found in Alberta, Canada. Take a look at this thing. Doesn't this look like it's ready for business? This was beautifully preserved, the top half of him only, and it's about the size of this table. Just an incredible thing. It looks like it's ready for combat. Now, we're going to talk about this. And incidentally, does sharp teeth always mean meat eaters? Take a look at this. Oh, yeah. Oh, I like that picture. I like it. He's smiling. Take a look at this. These are skulls of bears. They've got canine teeth. So for an evolutionist, that always means meat eating. Always. But the one on the left is a panda. Now, you tell me what a panda bear eats. Bamboo. Anything else? Nope, just bamboo. So, you know what an evolutionist will therefore say about a panda bear? It used to be a meat eater then. So, can you see a panda bear trying to chase something down? Anyway, they are locked into that model. So sharp teeth, and a grizzly bear, even if you don't have fish readily available, can do quite well on grazing and berries and so forth. It's an omnivore, it eats anything. But you'll never find more serious canines than on a grizzly bear. So it's kind of interesting. So sharp teeth don't necessarily mean it had to be eating meat. Incidentally, look at this one I've got, and it's up here for you to look at. This one on the left, you see the trough in it that comes from the other tooth. As it closed its mouth, kept rubbing. So I tell kids, they understand this, they get this. This dinosaur needed braces. And that was a dinosaur there, Spinosaurus. And these teeth are from, but almost certainly vegetarian dinosaurs, Camarasaurus and Triceratops. Now, come on, here we go. Before I get to the amalgamation quotes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, dinosaur to birds. Did you know that it's a huge belief in the evolution community that dinosaurs evolved into birds? I mean, it's like, you know, you talk with them, it's kind of like, oh, please, you don't believe dinosaurs evolved into birds. Oh, my goodness, are you backward, people? You Bible believers. Okay, so let's look at the evidence, shall we? Okay, here it is. They think it's a slam dunk. They've got two theories. First of all, the theory of large ground bipeds, and that means two legs. So that means guys like this became a bird. Now you tell me what's the problem with that. It's heavy, it's got a lot of excess weight, it's got real tiny front legs that are supposed to become big wings. All right, we got to lose this big heavy tail. It'd be nice if it could develop hollow bones by that too. But anyway, so yeah, there's almost nothing right with this to become a ground biped. A lot of issues there. So they got another theory, and that is small crocodiles from the trees. That's what they call it, not me. Small crocodiles from the trees. So small crocodiles climbed up trees, saw food out there, and jumped out from the tree and grabbed food. Now, if they were successful, that was good. Could make babies and more crocodiles for trees. But the more it could go further, the more it could go out there. Eventually, somehow or other, it figured that you could have wing flap things, you know, like a flying squirrel, the sailing kind of things, and you could go further. Well, eventually, it's even better if you get that into wings. And then those things that are bumps on the scales, the bumpy scales, can become feathers, okay? Bumpy bumps on the skin become follicles. They grow out from underneath the skin to become feathers. That's all. That's all that's required. The lungs are a bit of an issue because reptile lungs are very slow breathing, whereas a bird, when it's flapping its wings, is actually breathing whenever it's doing that. And so that's a jump. So anyway, there it is. And okay, so I've convinced you now that the science is solid behind. So whenever you go to Kentucky Fried Dinosaurs, you can pick up a bucket of crispy dinosaur. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Because that's what birds have become. Oh, well, let's take a look and see. Does the fossil record help us? Does the layers where they found birds and dinosaurs help? Here's feathered birds. They go down to the Jurassic layer. So I don't believe these numbers, but I'm just telling you they feel 150 million years ago or so, we started to get fossils that had half bird, half dinosaur or lizards. Well, okay, and incidentally, they've got flying dinosaurs. Did they become birds? No, that was a dead end. They did not become birds. It was the two-legged ones that became birds. Land dinosaurs, and they go down to the Triassic. Uh-oh. But a problem is we found those bird footprints that also go down to the Triassic. I think I showed this to you last night. And that is a problem because we have bird footprints in places that there should not be bird footprints. That's much too down deep, that's too low. And now you got it down to where the dinosaurs are begun to be found, and you have bird footprints. And so it's hard to imagine one to grow into another if they're in the same place. Right? That makes sense? So anyway, the evidence is pretty difficult to get around. And this is what they said. It's significant because we find footprints with morphology, shape, identical to modern birds and rocks that predate by 55 million years the first record of true aves, or birds. So, yep, they don't know quite what to do with that. So here's dinosaur evolution in place, okay? All right, there's the 10 families, shall we say, of dinosaurs. We'll put birds up there as a potential family of dinosaurs to show how open-minded we are. We'll put them all together. That's a number of specimens they found in the fossil record, and those are all very conservative numbers. And let's see, and it goes to the left back in time to an imaginary reptile kind of ancestor of everybody, which they haven't found yet. But anyway, they assume he's back there because all of the places to the left, which go deeper in the ground, we've got lots of fossils there. It's not like we're short on fossils. So let's take a look and see how we're doing on finding. Oh, okay, we're not finding any of them. We're not finding any links of anybody branching off or pre-dinosaur dinosaurs or anything. In fact, you think I'm kidding, here is a dinosaur expert and evolutionist to say this. From my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs, no direct ancestors have been discovered for any dinosaur species. Did you catch that? He said, alas, my list of dinosaurian ancestors is an empty one. So he admits that you don't see any changes in dinosaurs. You don't see any early versions. You don't see something coming into becoming another kind of dinosaur. These are experts on this. You don't hear about this on PBS. So what happened to dinosaurs? This is actually one thing where we somewhat agree with our evolutionist buddies, and that is that some major event affected a lot of the dinosaurs. Candidates for largest dinosaurs are these guys, Titanosaurus and these guys that were like 130 feet long. That's pretty long. 70, 80 tons, pretty big. Well, guess what? The average size of a dinosaur was the size of a large dog. Really? Yeah, the average size. They got as small as chickens. In fact, they found a turkey-sized one recently, and I'm waiting for the name to come out, Turkeyosaurus or something. But anyway, so they find them small. So here's my trivia question for you. What's the difference between a reptile, regular lizard, and a dinosaur? And it's not size. It's not size because of that average, get as small as chickens. It's a physiological, it's a structural difference. Anybody know?
Age.
Not age. Pardon me? Not bone density. Did you hear what I said in class? What? What do you think?
Fossils?
Fossils?
Yeah, like the dinosaur fossils. Like dinosaurs are already extinct and.
Oh, but they had lizards then too. They had lizards. We have fossils of lizards. Nope, not food. Yes. Yes. Theodore knows. He wants to show off. He heard me talk early. It's in the hips, folks. It's in the hips. Lizard hips. That sounds funny. Lizard hips. Lizard hips have legs that go straight out. All right? Then so a lizard does this to get around. Whereas dinosaurs have hips that put the legs straight down, get the body off the ground, whether it's 4 or 2. And that is the structural difference between a lizard and a dinosaur. And it's not size, because like I say, they're not all big. We got excited when we saw the big ones. So here's a good question for you. Did dinosaurs sneak onto the ark? Did some of the smaller ones sneak onto the ark? Well, what's interesting is we do have lots of dragon stories from all around the world. Dragon stories, giant lizard stories. And these aren't necessarily of lizards that were the size of houses. They often were the size of horses. So anyway, we have stories from all around the world. Marco Polo mentions that he just happened to pass by a cave that had a dragon in it. No big deal. Take a look. It's anywhere from China to England, St. George slaying the dragon. We have all these stories, and here's a couple of things that are consistent with these stories. There's some village or some population of people, and over here in a cave or nearby in some little area, there is a dragon. Remember what the word means. And it's a threat to the locals. They're tired of it. It scares them, whatever, and they send a knight over or a mob, and they dispatch it, and that is the last one. There's never herds of them, flocks of them. There's always like the very last one, and then it's gone. So it's like the last remnant or whatever kind of animal it was. We know that humans took out mammoths. We would have mammoths today if it wasn't for humans. Mammoths probably were hunted to extinction. We know there's other animals that early man probably hunted to extinction. A ground sloth comes to mind. So anyway, what may have happened to these guys is they got hunted. Now, I know what you're thinking, amalgamation and stuff like that. We'll take a look at these verses and see. But it's interesting. Incidentally, whenever you ask an evolutionist, why do you suppose they have all these dragon stories? Because there's not giant tiger stories or giant anything else. They're all giant lizard stories. And he says, oh, well, some people probably dug up bones and saw these. I said, well, where would you get a lizard from that? Where would you think a lizard? Do you know what a lizard was to most people living in ancient days? A pest. Honey, there's a lizard on the wall. Would you come get it? I mean, seriously, that's all a lizard was. Hardly scary. Just a pest. So why would they think of giant pests? Why wouldn't they, if they lived in an area where there were wolves and you saw a bone like this, why wouldn't you conceive of a scary story involving giant wolves? There's no giant wolf stories. They're all giant lizard stories. So there might be some little grain of truth that's been embellished over the years that may still be coming down to us. Now, I'm going to finish with this text, but then I'm going to show you a couple of Spirit of Prophecy texts. But here we are. We're going to put a scary-looking head on this T-Rex. Make him scary-looking. Ooh, a dragon-like kind of thing, modern dragon. And I want you to take a look at this verse in a different way. So the great dragon was cast out. What does the word dragon mean? Big reptile, big lizard, big reptile. What does dinosaur mean? Awesome lizard. Kind of similar. I'm going to put the word in there. It's not a terrible mismanagement of Scripture. I'm going to put the great dinosaur was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. Now, remember I hinted at maybe the thing he's interested in deceiving the world at, as we get into Revelation 12, 13, 14, is the question of creation. And you tell me what more effective single image there is out there than the picture of a dinosaur to discredit Genesis. Isn't it true? You put a dinosaur in front of people and they say, oh yeah, millions of years, not Genesis. Don't you think? Of all the single images, to me it's an effective image that he uses to deceive the world. So that's kind of interesting to me. Now, this being an Adventist group in America, I'm going to show you some famous quotes on the subject of dinosaurs. And she never uses the word dinosaur, but she certainly knew about their discovery. But if there was one sin above another which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere. Okay, this is a very misunderstood quote, so let me tell you a little bit. First of all, what's amalgamation mean? It means mixing things. It means mixing, okay? So, notice she says, if there's one sin above another which called for the destruction, which called for the flood, if there was one thing that broke the camel's back and that locked it in, it was this sin of amalgamation. Now, some people have imagined she's talking about man with beast. But please notice she says, deface the image of God and cause confusion. Keep those terms separately as we talk about this. Deface the image of God, cause confusion. If it's that serious of a sin, it's going to be in the Bible. Are you right with me on this? If there was one sin above another that caused the flood, you think it would be in the Bible. So I go to the Bible, and this is what I read. The sons of God looked upon the daughters of men, that they were fair, and married them. Take a look at the next verse. God says, I'm done with man. 120 years. That's it. It's almost like a very snap kind of thing. That's it. When the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men, that they were fair. What's that talking about? What's that mixing going on? Sons of God is Seth's line, is the godly line, God's people. They see the daughters of men, that's Cain's line. Please don't use angels and stuff like this. That's Cain's line. That's outside the church. In essence, God's people married outside the church. And they went after idol worshipers and so forth. And God had nobody left to talk to because they were all gone. Are you with me? Deface the image of God, in that those people now became locked into that culture and that lifestyle. and they became totally embedded in the violence of that world. If you think I'm kidding about the animals, let's take a look further about confusion. What did they do with the animals? Every species of animal which God had created were preserved in the ark. How many? Every. The confused species, which God did not create, which were the result of amalgamation, were destroyed by the flood. Confused species. Okay, now what could she possibly be talking about? All right, let's assume for a moment that the people that lived before the flood were not knuckle-dragging Neanderthal kinds, but actually pretty smart, pretty advanced. There's a lot of evidence that these people were further developed than we thought. Now, let's say they knew how to dabble in breeding. I'm thinking if I am a violent-oriented person with some intelligence, and I'm looking at the most amazing family of animals ever in the dinosaurs, I'm looking at them and I'm combat-oriented. I'm thinking, what can I make out of these guys? What kind of pit bull can I create? What kind of warrior for warfare? What kind of hunter can I make for sport hunting? What kind of animal can I bring to an arena and sell tickets? You know, what kind of animal can we create? The confused species that she's talking about is one of the reasons why God destroyed the animal kingdom as well as the human kingdom, because the animal kingdom had turned to violence as well, and apparently not strictly on their own, but with a little help with some confused species. So I want you to get this, because Seventh-day Adventists have got a fairly unique view on this based on some of these comments. And I've, for instance, at the North Pacific Union Conference, where you've got church workers that have dedicated their life to serving the Lord, they come up to me and say, Stan, you know, when I was in school, we weren't supposed to talk about dinosaurs. Okay, because we had a hard time explaining this. We thought, and some people thought, I'll bet you all dinosaurs are amalgamations and devil-made and human-made kind of thing. I'm just thinking, I'm somewhere in the middle of all that. I'm thinking that there was a basic kind of dinosaur that man messed with and made some very combat type out of. Those are the ones we have in the flood. Those are the ones that were preserved, not the original ones from the Garden of Eden. They're gone by this time, centuries later. So does that make some kind of sense? I know this may be new to you, so I want you to think about some of that. Look at this also. There was a class. There were a class of very large animals which perished at the flood. God knew that the strength of man would decrease, and these mammoth animals could not be controlled by feeble man. Mammoth means big there. So, what kind of animals were we talking about? I think we are talking about these guys. These big four-legged, sauropod, big giant, long-necked dinosaurs. Because we got elephants, so whatever the animal is has to be bigger than an elephant. Yes?
Could man have mixed reptiles and mammals? I mean, you're talking about, when you look at a dinosaur, with legs like that,
Yeah.
it's got legs like, more like an elephant or something like that, as opposed
Yeah.
to a reptile.
Yes, the big ones were, yeah. But this would be in the category of these mammoth animals. So to me, she's not saying these were destroyed because they were confused. God destroyed these because they were too big. And that would make me think that these were God created. So she would have said that they would have been confused. If they were confused, that's why they died too. So incidentally, before the flood, we think that the atmosphere of this planet was such that you could practically watch plants grow. The plants would have been very healthy. God would have needed giant hedge trimmers. It's a possibility. After the flood also, though, think about this. After the flood, it'd be quite a while before vegetation recovered. Might be a while before these animals could even survive. So anyway, so there's a class of large animals that were destroyed, and I think those are the ones that are bigger than elephants, and they were destroyed. Now, the question might be, If God created smaller dinosaurs, technically dinosaurs, the medium to small ones that were not bigger than elephants, did those possibly get on the ark and become the legend, the basics of the legends of those dragon stories around the world later? I think that's a possibility. I don't know if it's a hill we're dying on for that either, but that's a possibility. Okay, I am done with my talk on dinosaurs. Do you have any questions? Yes. Oh, yes, Mokalabembe. Mokalabembe is a legendary dinosaur in Africa. I forget what country in particular, but I'm afraid this is my view of Mokalabembe. You get Americans going from a church group or something, and they've got a picture book, and they come to a village in Africa, and they start showing pictures. Do you have any of these kind of animals? Lions. Oh, yeah. No, we got these. How about this one? Giraffe. Yeah. And you show them a buffalo, American buffalo. Oh, we haven't seen that before. Then you show a dinosaur. Oh, Mokalabembe. Yeah. For a few dollars, we'll take you over to the river and show you where he lives. So they take him over to the river. They find a place that's flattened. Something had flattened down the plants there a little bit. And you might see a little footprint or something here or there, and that's all you see. Be sure to tell your friends to come bring some more people over, and we'll give you tours of. I kind of think that's what it is when I read the stories involving it, because they show that kind of evidence, but they never show the dinosaur. And to me, a big animal would be really hard to keep secret. Really hard. Now, you might ask a question about Loch Ness Monster. Loch Ness Monster may have been a plesiosaur, and so that's a swimming dinosaur. And early stories about it that date back a few hundred years may well have included a real sighting of something that might have been from flood days, might have got caught in the loch. Might have been the source of the beginning of the legends there, although you know the most famous picture of the head sticking out of the water, somebody finally came up with a confession that they had faked that. After all these years, after like 30, 40, 50 years of it being this hard to explain picture. But anyway, there is every Brit and every American with sonar and any kind of thing that's been all over that lake. It's deep, yes, but the motivation for getting on national television and writing books and forever being a hero of discovery, there's people deeply motivated to find it. They're putting everything they can in it, and they haven't found a thing. So I think that they're not going to. So anyway, I don't think any dinosaurs exist today. And that's partly because there's so many people looking and haven't found it. I don't mean to throw mud on everything, or water on your, but anyway. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes? Yep.
Oh,
So Mike.
sorry. I know back in the early records in some of the kingdoms and that, especially over in the English areas, they had records of large lizards coming through and tearing everything up. Some of them were even, they were saying fire breathing.
Yeah.
And I know, I've heard down in Africa, there is one that can actually breathe fire.
Well, I know that there's animals that can spit acidic kinds of things. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah, it's conceivable, I suppose. But, it's all kind of conjecture, unless you actually have one to see it and, do studies of it. I'd like to see things before I can believe them. I'm Thomas. But God loves Thomases.
Hey, Pastor Stan, we were asking this
Where?
morning
Oh, there you are,
when
Jeff.
you started talking about your idea of what Darwin was trying to say with natural selection,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you made the point that if we believe in that view, then we believe that. Can you expand on that? What you were saying, like then God would be using death to.
Oh, yes.
move us
If you were a
into-
theistic evolutionist, in other words, you believe that, yes, it has been millions of years, and God has been using evolution to get us to where we are today. That's God's method of creating man via, a knuckle dragger or whatever, that kind of thing, and then got us upright, and here we are. The point is that's taken millions of generations to get us here. And for whatever reason, that would have been the method God chose. That would have included all kinds of struggles and dying and everything else for the history of this planet. And that makes it seem like God is the originator of death. It wasn't something that came in because of sin. I have a real question for the Roman Catholic Church right now, and I want to get a theologian that could answer this. Have you ever heard of original sin? It's big in the theology of the Catholic Church. And they believe that not only did Adam sin, and so he was guilty of sin because he had kids, we are not only guilty of a tendency to sin, but we share the guilt of what Adam did. We share that guilt. That's original sin. And my question for them is, now they believe, at least according to two popes writing on the subject, that man did evolve. Man was that knuckle dragger, and then somehow God took an Adam-type person, or potential Adam, put a soul in that person, created a living soul, put it in that person, and suddenly he became aware of himself and God, and that was Adam. What were the other people? I assume this is not the only human being walking around, or potential human, because through him, supposedly, original sin goes. Now, if these others were existing and they were not connected with Adam like that, then are they guilty of original sin? Is there sort of an osmosis thing going on for the rest of the human world, or what? You know, it kind of messes up that whole basis for why you need, you need the priesthood and you need absolution and all these different things are based on you got original sin you got to deal with. So anyway, I'm curious. I've never heard a good answer on that.
And did you have some kind of connection to during that talk about, so then what would the cross have accomplished? Like if God is using death to move us forward.
Yeah.
What were you saying about that? I thought you made some kind of comment.
Well, evolution says that the reason that there is death, the purpose of death in evolution is to get old species out of the way for better ones. So we're better ones. Doesn't that encourage you? But that would be the way. And so does God use death to create life? And if I'm a theistic evolutionist and I'm honest with myself, that's what I would be saying. And that not all of them think about the ramifications of it. In fact, most of the people who are theistic evolutionists keep religion over here in this part of their brain and science over here and don't want to think about don't want to think about it. Yes?
You brought up one other thought, and that was when you look at all the appendages of all the mammals, of the apes and they're like ours.
Yes.
I have one explanation for that.
Oh,
It was
you
a
do?
good design. Why not use it again?
Common design?
Yeah. I don't need to remake it again. It was a good design to begin with.
I have to tell you guys about this bone. I did the same talk at a little church west of Portland called Scappoose. Anyway, in Scappoose, there is a guy who works for the Bureau of Land Management, and he's sort of a ranger for them. So he's got a little bit of reputation with the kids in the church as sort of Ranger Bob or whatever. Anyway, he came up to me after I was done with one of the talks, and he showed me in a little tiny case, this big, not an inch big, a femur that was identical in shape to that. Absolutely identical to every bump, every curve. And he says, this is from a shrew that I had the skeleton of. And I said, boy, what God can do with a thigh bone. Man, I mean, that thing would have been this big compared to this one. That's cool. Common designer. Yeah, why not? Okay, are we done? Pastor, are we done? No more questions? You want to come up here and take a look at some fossils, including some dinosaur pieces we'll let you look at. But let's everybody stand and we'll have a closing word of prayer. Thank you very much for letting me come and talk about these things. I tried to get your brain to think after a very good lunch, and I know it was a bit of a challenge. So keep you awake. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the amazing animals that you've created, including the behemoth that you bragged to Job about in its immense size and its tail like a cedar tree. Maybe that was a dinosaur. But anyway, Ellen White talked about mammoth animals that lived before the flood that you allowed to be destroyed in the flood because we couldn't handle them afterwards. Sure sounds like you created some kinds of dinosaurs. Lord, thank you very much for being an incredible designer, incredible creator. The variety in the animal kingdom is unbelievable. And what a loving God you are, so interested in detail and art of creation. Thank you, Lord, that we were made in your image when you thought about making us. Please go with us today as we continue to celebrate Sabbath. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, come on up if you're interested in some of these goodies.